Mike Pompeo will visit Israel this week as the country gears up for major elections next month. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is running for re-election. He's the first sitting Israeli leader to be indicted on criminal charges.
Netanyahu allegedly received hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes, but he could still be re-elected when voters head to the polls April 9th. CBS News State Department reporter Christina Ruffini is following the latest from Washington. So, Christina, what are the rules about this? Can the prime minister be reelected while facing prosecution?
Good morning, guys. He can, actually. There is no rule saying a sitting prime minister can't keep his job while he's under indictment. The bigger issue is there is a rule that says you can't be a minister and keep your job. So, but Netanyahu is also the Minister of Defense. So he could, in theory, stay in office with his prime minister job, but he would have to give up his role in some of these other things. Now, the interesting thing is, so the election is in April. The election is April 9th. The real date that we need to look at is this August 10th date, because that's the date by which the Attorney General has said they're going to hold the hearing to decide whether or not they need to indict him. You know, as you mentioned, he's accused of taking more than $200,000 in bribes, but it won't be until after the election it's decided whether or not he's being brought up on charges, and that's at the request of the Prime Minister's attorney. So really, we need to watch not only the April 9th date, but that July 10th date to see if he wins and then if he can stay in office once he's indicted.
So then, how impactful will a visit from the U.S. Secretary of State be? Mike Pompeo is there to commiserate with Netanyahu. Will that help or hurt him?
It's an interesting question. We've asked several times. We've asked the secretary, and he was asked on the plane before he left for his Middle East trip if he thought this would impact the election, or if these visits were a way to sway the election one way or the other. And he said what Trump administration officials have been saying all week: Israel is an important ally, and we don't stop our meetings with them just because they're in an election cycle. Netanyahu is also set to come to Washington next week for AIPAC and to meet with the president.
So we've seen all these photos of billboards of President Trump and Bibi in Israel showing this very close relationship that the prime minister has with the president of the United States. Does that give him a bump back home?
The consensus seems to be that he's already gotten whatever bump he's going to get from voters out of this very strong, very close relationship he has with President Trump. Like you said, he's certainly capitalizing on it, and he's gotten some really big policies done for his domestic audience, right? He got the embassy move. The two are lockstep on a lot of policies, including security, and that's already helped him. So this is almost a victory lap to kind of reinforce that. However, when I met with some experts on this topic last week, I asked if the two leaders shared a similar type of voter base. You know, the president once said he could shoot someone in Times Square and his supporters would still vote for him. And the resounding response was no, it's not a cult of personality. With Bibi, Israelis are single-issue voters for the most part. They vote for the person they think can keep them safe. In fact, while we were in that meeting, the people I was with got the alerts on their phones about those rockets being fired towards Tel Aviv, and they said that really illustrates the point. And for 4 consecutive terms, Netanyahu has made the argument that he's the only one with the gravitas and recognition on the international stage to forge the alliances Israelis need to protect themselves. And I'm sure he's hoping to reemphasize those close relationships with the U.S., both with Secretary Pompeo this week and President Trump the next.
So what's it looking like for him? Are there polls out? Does it look like he could win?
Polls are very tricky. As we've seen in our own elections, they can be unreliable, and they're especially, I've been told, unreliable and unpredictable in Israel. But it looks like he's got a good shot. The Jerusalem Post had him up today over his biggest competitor. And we'll have to see. Again, the bigger date to watch might not be in April, but it might be after in August, because not only does he have to win, but he has to win a biggest majority. It's a parliamentary system, so he has to win enough seats to not only form a government, but then to protect himself from any legal action in this case. There's also a thought that he might try to pass very quickly before that August deadline a rule, like I said, that says you can't, he can't be indicted, but he's going to need a lot of seats to do that. And I think he's possibly more likely to win than he is to get that majority he might need to pass those measures.
Yeah, that would be. Well, it'll be interesting to watch. Let's just say, we'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Christina, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
The president